Welcome to a place for movement, nutrition, mindset, and sustainable rhythm. This is Body Evolution. Welcome back to the Body Evolution podcast, where health becomes simple, sustainable, and human. Hi, I'm Corey Rep.
And I'm Elliot Beringer. Here we break down fitness, nutrition, habits, energy through one lens, what actually works in real life. Let's do
Let's do it.
this. So, last part, in part A of this nutritional aspect, we were talking about the macronutrients, proteins, fats, and we were talking about how important carbohydrates and all these macronutrients are in our life. And now we want to continue this talk. So now we're gonna jump into something very important. It's about metabolic flexibility. So we want to jump into this because it's one of the most important aspects we have to learn about nutrition. So Corey, when we talk about metabolic flexibility, what what exactly what does it mean becoming metabolic flexible?
Yeah,
Is
I think
what we're talking about
yeah,
here.
I think a lot of people don't even really understand what metabolism is. People say I've got a fast metabolism or I got a slow metabolism, or and they sort of they mean that well, I got a slow metabolism, so I don't have a lot of energy and I gain weight quickly or something like that. I've got a fast metabolism. That person doesn't gain weight. That's kind of how people sort of picture metabolism. What metabolism is our body's process for burning energy, and it is how we create energy in our body. And so yes, somebody who has a high metabolism essentially burns a lot of energy. They're efficient at burning energy. Person with what we call a low metabolism will be a person who's not very efficient at burning energy, and therefore um, when we talk about metabolic flexibility, we talk about being able to burn different sources of energy sort of readily being able to switch from one source of energy to another. And we talked in the part A of this episode about our energy sources were carbohydrates, mainly carbohydrates or sugars, and then fats. Those are the sources of energy that our body uses. And so switching between carbohydrates and fats when our body needs to, that's the flexibility called metabolic flexibility. And believe it or not, we can become inflexible. So our body can always burn some fat, can always burn some sugars. But if our body's too used to always having carbohydrates, always having sugars in our bloodstream, then it doesn't not good at switching to burning fats when it needs to. And that's something a lot of
Okay.
us, when we want to lose weight, want to lose fat off of our body's not very good at doing it. And so when we reduce what we eat, or we stop eating, and our bodies get slow on blood sugar and says, oh, well, we're not having enough calories here. Oh, are we going to go into that fat storage? How do we do that? And so it goes slower. And so we get that low energy, and people have the low blood sugar, and people have the keto flu, some people call it, when they just feel like blah, and so they feel horrible, and then it kicks up really strongly their hunger hormones, and their hunger drive kicks way up. And so that's somebody who's metabolically inflexible, too used to having sugars
Okay.
as a source of energy, and their body's not used to going to fats very readily or very easily. Whereas when we become metabolically flexible, our bodies switch more easily. It might be that little growl of hunger for a half hour, but then it's like, oh well, oh no, my body's okay. We can produce energy more quickly from the fats in our body. We can grab those stored fats more easily. We can go into ketosis, create those ketones to replace the sugars to burn energy more quickly and more readily. And that comes from sort of practice. That comes from insulin sensitivity, to where we increase that sensitivity to insulin, so our body sort of uses and stores those sugars more quickly and easily, and then our bodies are more readily able to, or cells are more readily able to use different sources of energy, and that's the mitochondria in our cells become more more abundant and more efficient. That's metabolic flexibility. That's what the mitochondria in our cells are, these little organelles, they call them, in our cells, that actually create the energy molecules that our cells use for energy. They create the ATP. And so the the mitochondria can get unhealthy within the cells. They can sort of die off. You can have fewer mitochondria per cell. And so that's a lower metabolism. And so higher
Ah,
metabolism means healthy and abundant mitochondria in your cells. And that can be manipulated through your diet and exercise habits, your lifestyle habits. And so the body is very adaptable, but we've sort of trained it not to be in so many circumstances. And that's where we can go back to trying to train it to be metabolically flexible.
okay. I love what you were explaining, and while you were explaining these things, there are things that come to me. So one of these is metabolic flexibility. I love the explanation you were giving. This balance of playing that how our body produces the energy from carbs and fats. So the main thing is the energy in a metabolic flexibility too is gonna it's going to affect how our body produce all like the hormones and how it becomes. So part of the metabolic system of our body too is sleep. So sleep is super important in these processes because in sleep is part of where our metabolism does a lot of different functions like repairment, cleaning the body, taking out toxins. So there are different. So the when we're talking about metabolically is the production of energy plus other processes that are happening in the body. And first, you were explaining about these people who is slow metabolic and who is fast metabolic. There is no good or bad. Just trust me, there is no good or bad. There is not because I have a slow metabolism is bad. Uh, well, everything in life they you have to measure. You have your yin and yang, no, the good part and the bad part. Someone who is slow metabolism, maybe it can take her a little bit longer to do the digestion, maybe to produce the energy, how it works. But it happens too that they can store better fat, so right now these days in this society we look at like, oh no, but I don't want to store more fat. Well, in the past, if we look, there were moments in the year that there was not access to food. So having a good storage of fat was key for survival. And someone with a very fast metabolism who is it have a little bit harder time to put some weight and to get
Not as
they
efficient.
were
Yeah.
lacking. Yes, they were lacking a little bit of those resources for surviving. So there is no good or bad, but it's good to understand our body. uh, so if it's fast or slow, it's good. It's like, and there is, please don't look supplements when they say like, oh, take this and you're gonna boost your metabolic and it's gonna be faster. It's not true. There is a lot of research done about these things, and you can improve through nutrition and everything the rhythm, but you cannot boost and put higher and you go from slow metabolism body to a fast metabolism because you take a supplement. It doesn't
What
happen
what
like
those
that.
supplements actually do is they stimulate your body to use more energy in the short term. Your
Temperature,
your heart rate goes
exactly.
up and everything else. And yes, they burn more
Exactly.
energy in that time when that substance is affecting your body. There's certain foods that'll do that, certain supplements that might do that. Yeah,
Caffeine
caffeine, obviously, is
is
one of those
one of those,
stimulants
for
that will,
example.
but again, you don't overdoing that puts a lot of stress on your body, and so that's not the way to
Yes.
improve your metabolism. You're not improving your metabolism, you're spiking it in a specific period.
Exactly. And you're not changing your metabolism. It's going to be still the same. You are just in that moment putting something that elevates your heart rate. So, of course, it's the same. If I put you to run, you will have the same effect. If you elevate your heart rate and everything, your metabolism have to begin to go a little bit faster to burn some energy and everything. And I love when you were talking about, for example, the keto diet, uh, the ketosis and the ketones. And what happens here is to understand when you lack flexibility, there is something so common when some people jump from a high carbohydrate diet to a low carbohydrate diet, and they call it the keto flu. But the keto flu usually it happens because the body is not adapt or doesn't know yet to be efficient on breaking down fats, and that's when that we have this keto flu where it really feels like you're getting sick, and it's that process of adaptation. How we can mitigate those things is teaching our body to get more from fat. So it's slowly to do the change, not from one day to another. I jump into a keto diet or to a low carb diet because you are going to have these issues. So what you will have to do is to adapt and teach the flexibility. So more about focusing on fast metabolism and slow metabolism. We want to focus more in the flexibility of our metabolism to work from carbs or to work from fats, and that will improve in so many ways. So that is going to improve in how it produces hormones, in how it repairs and everything, and depending of the sources. So if you're doing a lot of exercise and it knows how to bring energy from fats, when it burns all the carbs, it's going to be easier that you keep the performance, you keep on going because your body have to know how to produce this. And it's important. The metabolic flexibility is not is something that we, let's say that we have put it aside for a long time, and we have discovered that it's so important because we need that our body can work from fats or carbs because the two are sources of energy. And if you only depend on carbs for a long time, and our society sadly have become these addict of carbs, with the sugars and the breads and the pastas and all these simple carbohydrates that we overconsume day after day, uh, and we never allowed our body to produce the energy from fats, and that's where we want to do that play role where we teach our body to work better with fats. As I say, they did this research on everything in the past when they demonized fats. So we began to overconsume, and we were doing every 0% fat, 0% fat, and we were eating a lot of carbs. And our body is an adaptive machine. I say, okay, I'm gonna work from carbs. I don't need to work from fat. So it's like is that process get disrupted, and now their body is like with after years and years and years is like it needs time to remember how to do that process.
Right, and
So we need,
the ins the insensitivity or the pre-diabetic situation or the diabetes is that is highly associated with lack of metabolic flexibility. And that's they go hand in hand because it's almost like the opposite of metabolic flexibility is diabetes, type 2 diabetes, to where your body gets so overdone with constant carbohydrates, constant sugar burning, that it doesn't know how to burn fat. It gets overtired of that system, the insulin, constant insulin hitting the cells. They become insensitive to it. It doesn't get as efficient at bringing the sugars out of the blood, and eventually it can't keep up. That's when you're technically a diabetic, when your insulin can't you're naturally producing insulin does not keep up with taking the sugar out of the bloodstream. And so that's the opposite of metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility is associated with very high insulin sensitivity. And so that there's periods where your body works without any sugars at all. And so you get that rest from the insulin. and so and so
yes,
your cells become more sensitive to the insulin and things like that. So that's where
yes.
they kind of go hand in hand.
And this is fun because you made me remember one thing. And sometimes people, we have this question like, oh yes, but in the past people were not thinking about, like, if we think about 200 years ago, 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, people were not thinking about metabolic flexibility and everything. Well, it was done by nature. It was completely done by nature. If we look the foods available in nature during the year, you will see that there was a moment for carbs and there was a moment for fats. So summer and fall, if you look, if you eat seasonal and you take vegetables and fruits in a seasonal way, you will see that summer and fall is what we have like the majority of fruits, the majority of vegetables that are rich in fructose, that elevates those carbohydrates a lot. And in the past, when we see these tree of, I don't know, apples, or when we find some, we will stop and start like starch all, because you put them, take it with you, it's too much and everything. You will eat all these carbohydrates during this part of the year, and you will produce a lot of little fat in your body that was a preparation for what is winter and spring, because in winter spring you will have less access to carbohydrates, and you will need your body to work more in a high demand of fats, so it can take the energy from your storage, but you will be eating more for hunting animals and from other sources, because there was, in winter there is not too much vegetables, there is not too much fruits and everything, so you were depending more on fats in those moments. So it was given that flexibility by a natural process. We didn't need to think about it at all. It was just done by nature. But now these days, you can eat the same fruit the whole year. You can find the same fruit that is only in summer, you find it through the whole season of the year. So we have hacked the system, and it's cool, but at the same time, that's what we have lose this flexibility, because now we have access to carbohydrates the whole year, and we can overeat them all the time. So that's the important of doing cycling these foods, trying to eat more seasonal and everything. Is help us this in a more natural way to do the process of the metabolic flexibility. And yes, it's so important that we understand that we need it's needed. It was a natural process of our body, and we have lost it because of the modern culture we have about nutrition. We have access to everything the whole
Yeah.
year.
And the process that our body hasn't lost is the ability to store the extra calories. So we, our body,
That one is
yeah,
really
we're
good.
really good at storing the fat, and it's obviously a great function that our body can do to store that energy for future use. It's a survival mechanism. It's been great for our evolution, and so that like that springs that's I'm sorry, summer fall where you have abundant carbohydrates in your environment, then our bodies we're going to eat tons of it, and we're going to overeat it. We're going to eat more calories every day than we need to in that time period, and our body will start storing that extra calories as fat. And and
Exactly.
so that's what we sort of lived off of over this winter time when there was a lack of calories, and we could only and we there was certainly wasn't carbohydrates. We'd be able to hunt for meat or fish, or or have some stored root vegetables here and there, but those kind of things were were the food was more rare, the calories were more rare, so our bodies were going off of that fat, so we'd have those, like you said, natural metabolic flexibility built up. But now
Uh,
now we have that. We always have them available. We don't ever have that time where that low period where we're going in regularly going into our body fat to use the energy.
We even hacked that part. We destroyed, like, in the past, winter was like no foods at all. There it's hard to find things. Now you go to winter, we have the feast of Christmas and eat like a bunch of energy. And those days of people go crazy in December, and you have all these chocolates and all this energy coming in. So you don't allow that process to happen. And in the following days, you're gonna have all these foods that are like, oh my god, high. And remember, we were talking about one of the issues we find in processed foods and these foods today, or these combinations. Even when it's two healthy foods being joined, we're always searching for this combination of high carbohydrate and high fat. This is it's incredible. When we're talking about this, you can see what happened. Look, ice cream, high carbs, high fat, people love it. A lasagna, high carbs, high fat, people love it. Pizza, high fat, high carb, people love it. It's like all these things, like raclette here well, in France. You eat the potato with the cheese. You go to the Alps. It's like these combinations always. But this all happens in winter, and we go and eat with bombs of calories and energy during winter. I don't know if there is still some trauma of our past of ancestors that there was not food in winter time, and now we in winter have all these festivities and things to eat like crazy and non-stop. So we stop that natural process. So metabolic flexibility is definitely one of the things anyone should aim in their nutrition. uh, and to if you want to try this later, we're gonna go into some tips. We will explain things that you can do to begin to create this flexibility. I don't know if you want to add something more about flexibility, because I wanted to talk about whole foods and processed foods, but I don't know if you have something else to add about metabolic flexibility.
Let's move on to that next topic.
Okay.
Whole foods and processed foods. So, why do you think that whole foods makes such a difference for health? Why is there such a push for whole foods? Why is it so special?
Oh, well, first is what we have been eating for our entire evolutionary, the human race have done for so many thousands of years, and is whole foods, is eat what it looks like food. The most natural things is the best for our body because they are created by nature. You have the nutrients we need and everything. And processed foods, they're tasty. They're delicious. Trust me, we have worked so hard to make these flavors, these different, the palate, are no, like the salty things, the sweet, the bitter, the acidity, the umami taste, and these things that are amazing. But here we're talking about nutrition. We're not talking about uh, melting everything in your mouth. And it doesn't mean when we talk about nutrition, it's not delicious. If you eat vegetables and meats and healthy foods, you can do the most amazing, delicious plates. But we have created all these easy way of doing foods that give energy but not nutrients to the body. So sugar is one of them. We have created all these ultra processed foods where there are bad fats, there are bad carbohydrates that create huge amount of that, but all it's all about energy, and our body craves them because our body's not sometimes knowing exactly what is good or not when it comes to nutrition. It wants energy, and when it finds a bomb of energy, like I don't know, a burger menu with fries and coke, and it's like a lot of calories, like, oh, I like that, give me more energy. But whole foods definitely is more about the nutrient density we need. It's about the fiber we need for our gut. That is a lot of ultra processed foods. They lack fiber, so they lack nutrients. They lack vitamins. They lack uh, uh, minerals. They lack the general nutrient density that we need, and they lack fiber. And whole foods usually give us better satiety. Uh, it keeps us feeling good and comfortable with the food, and and is less artificial things happening in our food. So whole foods is the most important, is the nutrient density, the fibers we find in it, and that it gives us everything our body needs. We don't need the ultra processed foods. And the danger of ultra processed foods is the amount of calories you can overeat when you have ultra processed foods. Because look, easily imagine a bag of potato chips. Maybe in that bag of potato chips, in the big ones, maybe you have, I don't know, 2 3 potatoes. If I serve you in a plate 2 3 potatoes, you eat those, you will be full. But the chips, you empty that and you want more, and you can eat, and you can overeat so much amount of food by ultra processed foods. And not only ultra processed, but some processed foods they will have the same effect. And in the industry of food, they have studied too much our paladar, so they know what to put to trigger, so you want to continue eating without non-stop. But
Mhm.
definitely, uh, this is something that you will have here each time more. We need more whole foods, but it's true. And the essential thing about the whole foods is that we are looking for having more nutrients that we're lacking in our society right now, vitamins and minerals. Uh, yes, explain us a little bit
I
more.
want to get into what processed food and ultra processed food really means, because I mean, you even butchering an animal is processing in some way, shape, or form.
Yes,
So it is a spectrum of processing, and not all processed foods are horrible for you. So we have to have some nuance in judging these things. But like you said, the food companies have developed these ultra processed foods where they have these combinations of flavors and fats and sugars and things like that that just make us want to crave more. And there's no satiety there. There's no, it doesn't fulfill us. It's something that when it's those energy calories are so simple and void of so much nutrients that our body's just like, well, give me more food, because not only does our body like to gorge on simple foods because it likes to store fat for the eventual winter that it thinks is coming, um, but it's also that we have that does not fill us up. Our body's consuming this stuff, and our body needs certain nutrients, and our body knows when we're not getting it, and so give me more food because we're not getting the nutrients we need. You know,
exactly.
and so that's where
Hey,
it's like,
where's my magnesium? I need magnesium. And it triggers, and you go, okay, I need to eat more, and you don't know
yeah,
why it
yeah,
is it.
right, right, exactly. And so it's the nutrient density is so important. And like you said, the ultra processed foods are stripped of the fiber and sometimes the protein and everything else, the things that are not only nutrients, but that makes us feel full, that makes us feel like they're good. So ultra processed basically means you can't make it in your kitchen. You know, you don't have the chemical additives and all the processing type of equipment it would take to make this food in your kitchen, right? And so the more simple, the closer that a food is to its original form in nature, that is less processed. The less it looks like anything that you could find in nature, the more processed it is, and you can kind of view it that way. But people have a good sense of what ultra processed is. They know that sugars and candies and sweets and stuff and cookies and baked products are processed. They know that when they buy something that's in a box that you just add water to make some kind of thing, that's ultra processed, something that can sit on the shelf for days and months and years and still taste the same. That's ultra processed. That is something that people have a feel for what is unhealthy. And there are processed foods. There's very healthy protein bars that are very nutritionally dense that are highly processed foods as well. So you can't just sort of lump everything into one category. But you have to know that when you're targeting foods, when you're eating foods, is this giving me the nutrients that I want?
Yes.
And that is really a really good way to look at, is this processed food going to be good for me or not? Or is it giving me the nutrients I need to, or is it just something that I'm eating for flavor or just for calories, just to put it in just to have something in my stomach because I feel hungry?
Yes. And here, sorry if I interrupt you, but
Huh?
there is a part of this part that we were explaining about ultra process. I wanted to say it's true what you say. There are when we say process is harder, like ultra process is easier to define, have a lot of chemics, conservants, colorants, artificial flavors, and everything to trigger and do a lot of stuff in our taste and palate and brain and go crazy for it. So ultra processed foods have all these process. When we say processed foods, there is a range, as you say, butchering and sometimes it's already a process. Cooking is already a process, but there is something that is dangerous at home. When we say about process, it's true that ultra processed we cannot produce at home, but sometimes at home we're doing a process where we're using ultra processed ingredient or some ingredients that when we mix them together are not that healthy. So for example, uh, if we want to do kind of food at home and we're using uh, wheat flour and we're using sugar and we're using this kind of candy and we're using this kind of implement and we begin to cook and we do a special cake or a special food and everything is delicious, but look at the ingredients you were using. How many of them were natural ingredients and how many of them were kind of processed or ultra processed, and you create all these at home. So is
Mhm.
yes.
No, yeah, I agree with you. What I'm basically is if the food or the ingredient, I guess you could say, is something you couldn't create in your own, just from natural things,
Yes,
and so yeah. But that is a good caveat that you're just because you're cooking it in your kitchen does not mean that it's not processed food or made
exactly.
of
No,
processed
because
food, right?
if someone is using sugar is already a process that we extract from cane, but it's not healthy. It doesn't have nutrients. It's like calories but empty nutrients. Or if you're using corn syrup, or if you are using other kind of things to give some taste, powders and things that are processed or ultra processed foods, and you're cooking at home, well, have that in mind that not because you're cooking at home is not ultra processed. If usually you're cooking at home and you're using several of ultra processed already ingredients. Uh, if you're taking, for example, you can do your own sauces, but if you're taking a ketchup, for example, it's already like ultra processed. We have a lot of conservants and aromas and chemics and everything. You can do it naturally at home in another process, but still, if you have to add a lot of sugars and some ingredients that are not naturally found in, you will not find it in nature, then it becomes a processed food. Let's say not ultra processed, but a processed food that is going to affect and disrupt and all these chemics and flavors, and even when they say natural flavors, sometimes it's chemical process. uh
Yeah, there's no regulation as to what they can call natural in an ingredient. So it's a
exactly.
natural color or natural flavor. There's no regulation on that, so they can pretty much call anything natural. So that's a little caveat to understand about processed foods.
Uh,
And also, I think that maybe a way to look at things is not necessarily processed versus unprocessed, but just look at nutrient
hmm,
density in what you're getting, and that's a better in terms of strategy of being, oh, I don't know what this is good for me, if this is not good for me, this is processed, this is ultra processed, this comes in a package where it's got a lot of shelf life, so I can't eat it, and so maybe look at concentrating on nutrition density of your food, which more whole foods will have more nutrition density, and more foods from nature will have a broader spectrum of nutrients. When we get it, we'll talk about micronutrients in a whole different episode. But that's the phytochemicals and the little vitamins and minerals that's so much more abundant in a whole food versus even a relatively nutrient dense processed food.
yes,
And those are little nuances to think about. So again, the natural foods are the high end of the spectrum of what quality foods are, and ultra processed sweets and chips and things like that, which everybody knows is bad. It's at the other end of the spectrum, but there's a lot in between. So think about your nutrient density, and nobody's got to be perfect. That's the other thing about this kind of thing. It's like
yes,
nobody's going to
yes,
be 100%, and so to
and
think that
don't try
I'm
it.
only to be healthy if I am all whole foods, that's just not, it's not worth
Look,
it.
I
Yeah,
love what you say because I want to intervene that it's so true. It's not about doing it perfect. Look, yes, we're talking about health, and if you go only whole foods and natural food, amazing. That's amazing. That's what everyone should be doing. Of course, beautiful. But trust me, a little bit from time to time, something that is not super healthy and having some a little bit of pleasure sometimes is really healthy. And what I mean here is if you are avoiding to eat something that you love like with all your force and you are all the time I can and you are in that mentality I cannot do a lot of things and you're obsessed in that, it creates a lot of stress in your mind and in your body, and that stress sometimes is going to be even more harmful than taking that slice of pizza or eating the donut. We're not saying don't overdo those things because we need, as Corey was explaining, we need the nutrients. But sometimes we can give a little bit of pleasure. So we don't advocate to be perfect because it's not about that, but to be aware and have a good balance is like the important aspect there. And
yeah,
uh, try to eat more of your time whole foods. That's the important aspect, and give the nutrients your body needs. Is even put
yeah,
that rule: start the day giving the nutrients your body need, and then if you have a meal that is not that healthy, is at least you already give the nutrients to the body. So
yeah. So that kind of leads into kind of our next section. We wanted to talk about these practical nutrition habits, and that's one of them.
just
Just try to get more whole foods in your diet, and that's something that we want to do. And there's other points about practical nutrition habits that we want to hit, and one of those is prioritizing protein, like we talked about, making sure that your diet includes enough protein to help your muscle, help that metabolism, help your structure of your body keep going, and that's sort of a main sort of building block of our diet to have enough protein.
yes, I'm
Now,
variety in that protein, please.
yes, yes, especially if you're vegan, you need a real variety in your protein sources. Um, Include whole foods, like we said, and eating consistently. Now, this is going to be sort of counter to a strategy that might say, I want to fast once in a while, but eating consistently is something that's going to trigger metabolism. And this is and again, it depends on what your strategy is, what your outcomes that you want are for performance and for full recovery from if you're in a heavy workout program, things like that. Eating consistently is going to help you recover quickly. It is going to make sure your metabolism stays up and stays going. The other side of it is if you want metabolic flexibility, you might want to have periods of fasting, things like that. So there's different strategies, but that's one thing you want to think about. Hydration. We didn't talk about hydration at all yet in this episode. It's water doesn't fit necessarily into
Macronutrients.
macronutrients because it doesn't have calories yet. It almost should be in a category that is in macronutrients because it is the volume of food that you're consuming, and water has so many functions in the body. Obviously, we're made mostly of water in terms of the mass of our body, and so having that much, having it in your system, helping you digest, helping you process things through your cells.
But it comes into micronutrients. In that conversation, water is important.
Yes, exactly. Because water has so many functions that with macronutrients, it helps to process and digest and cellular functions and getting rid of waste, all those things. So hydrating properly as a general talking point about your diet is really important. And building, like you said before, it's like starting your day, build meals around the nutrient quality. Think about what your body needs. And then gaining pleasure from the food on top of that is kind of a bonus. And if you have sort of the extra calories that you have, not that you need to count calories, but if you're not overeating when you're having all these nutrient dense stuff and say, oh, okay, I've got all this protein and I had all these vegetables. And it's like, okay, but I still need more energy. I still need more calories, but I've had all my nutrients for today. You can say, kind of check these boxes, then maybe you have something for pleasure.
Yeah.
Maybe you have a little bit of sugar, as long as you're not like spiking your insulin and doing things that are it's going to really hit your body hard. Like you said, having pleasure from your diet is a great thing.
Okay, but let's not put that it's not pleasure. Natural foods are very pleasure too.
Oh yeah, oh, yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. They can be and they are. But again, we've like you said, we've developed this food system to where we've had these ultra,
It's,
stimulating foods feel like really treats to us, and that's what they really should be, is treats, and not a core part of our diet.
yes.
But the natural foods, especially when you get off of eating, and this is a point that's good to make here too, is that when you get away from eating too many ultra processed, all these foods that just so are designed just to spark your brain into, I want more of this. If you get away from that a bit, stop eating sugars, things like that, these natural foods taste so much better. They are really, I mean, because they do have so much flavor, and we've just been overstimulated our taste buds and everything else, to where we come almost taste deaf to those foods or whatever, and so when we sort of resensitize our taste buds, those natural foods taste that much better.
Yes, and I love this part as you have been explaining about include the whole foods, the protein intake, the consistency of eating depending of your goals or what stage you are, hydration. All these are so important. Let's go into some practical tips in different aspects that we think. I think, and I'm sure that you think the same, that are so important. So when we're talking about building meals around nutrients, let's say that there are some things that are easy to follow. So these very practical tips, for example, how you build your dish is important. So how much protein, carbs, and fats you are going to integrate in that dish. So I will say that I will aim for 50% to 70% vegetables. If you do that, that's beautiful. You have a lot of vitamins and minerals coming in and fibers coming in. And then the rest you will divide it between the protein and the carbohydrates. And when I say vegetables, it's carbohydrates and fats. Okay, so depending on what you're eating, you will have to be more like you can do a salad where you have vegetables and add a little bit of avocado, so you have there the healthy fat, and a steak, and maybe you add a little bit of potato and you have the carbohydrate. So the way we build our dish, the smartest way is to always have a little bit of the three macronutrients and in a good ratio and creating a good balance so we don't overeat. So these days we do too much carbohydrate sometimes, like we eat maybe a meal where we have bread, we have rice and potato, like we have like sometimes three or four, five, six sources of carbohydrates, and it's crazy. And then we have our juice, or you're drinking the wine, or you're drinking this, and it's too many carbohydrates coming in, and maybe there's not enough fats or protein. So how we build the dish is so important. Vegetables, the main source, I will say, and then some good quality protein and a healthy carbohydrate campaign. But in the vegetables, you already have carbohydrates. So it's more to focus on the vegetables, a good protein source, and a good fat source, and maybe a little bit of the carbohydrates. That's one of the tips. Can you explain us, Corey, how what tip you will give the people if they want to create metabolic flexibility?
Yes. So yeah, we talked about metabolic flexibility, and we talked generally how you could harm it, or what historically our eating patterns have been. But to create or to maintain metabolic flexibility, you really need to exercise that system of using stored fat for, or even dietary fat for energy, versus always having carbs. So how do you do that? There's a few different ways to go at it. One is through exercise. So if you could do intense exercise,
Okay.
and you're your sugars in your muscles and in your liver and bloodstream aren't keeping up with that exercise, then your body's going to we need another source of energy.
Okay.
And it gets into trying to create ketones. You can do ketosis or just fat burning through aerobic energy production, which is fat and oxygen burning to create your ATP, your energy molecules. The other way, or one of the other ways, is through fasting.
Okay.
And targeted fasting has a lot of different benefits. One, narrows your eating window so you can eat less calories if that's one of your goals is to reduce calories. But the metabolic flexibility part is it forces your body to use up the sugars that are in your system and then find another energy source. And so when you're not eating for a period of time, for a long enough period of time, you use up those stored energy sources because the amount of glycogen stored in your muscles and your liver for the average person is about a day's worth of calories total.
Okay.
And so just to maintain the body. And so if you're if you have a fast long enough, or if you're exercising during the fast and using more energy to where you're using up those stored sugar calories, those stored glycogen stores in your muscles and liver, use that up, then your body's going to again search for another source of energy, and that'll get it by producing ketosis, and that ketosis, the ketones go into what do you call a keto diet. There's another strategy to say just an extremely low carb diet, which means I don't have enough carbohydrates in my diet to keep up with producing the energy I want just from the sugars that I break down from those carbohydrates. Then I'm going to go to another source for energy, and that is ketones. And there
Okay.
is breakdown. Once we can, and it's just a little caveat about a keto diet. And when you have extremely low carbs in your diet, your body does produce, can break down proteins and to create sugars in your,
Okay.
and there's a process for that. Um, and so that's where your body will catabolize muscle. But if you have enough protein in your diet, it does use that protein for energy.
Okay. But also,
It's a slower process.
let me recapitulate so everyone have
Yeah,
to create flexibility in our metabolism. We have different ways to approach. One, you say increment exercise. So we burn all the carbohydrates that we have in the reserve of our muscles and liver, and then we can enter the fat. Then you say fasting. So fasting will trigger in some moment during a period of time with we burn all the carbohydrates too, and we will enter the burning fat system. And then you talk about the keto diet. So keto diet is because we are eating low carbs. We are triggering our body to start working from fats. When you say this part of the protein that is this an issue on keto diet, or is more about if you are doing exercise and you are in a low carb diet? It's more related like
both.
both. Okay.
Yeah, and both, and your body, honestly, the efficiency of using protein, uh, the protein in our diet, only a certain, usually it's more than half, but not much more than half of our protein gets used for actually structural build. A lot of it gets used for the protein, the processing and the enzymes and things like that. But a lot of it is burned for energy, and it's burned for energy by that um, glycogenesis, the process of breaking down protein into glycogen, into the sugars that our bodies can use. And so it's not a dietary carbohydrate, but it still can produce blood sugar.
Okay.
That's why when somebody's on a long-term keto diet or a long-term fast, their blood sugar can still remain pretty consistent.
This is interesting, and I'm gonna talk about here. And this is so true what you're saying, because when I said it before, when we're talking about fats, for me, keto diet was good for my metabolism, uh, but I need it. So first, I'm gonna explain one tip that is very important, and then I'm gonna explain these effects that we were talking about. The first tip is if you want to avoid the famous keto flu, uh, the way to do it, this is gradually. So don't jump now into I want metabolic flexibility, so I'm gonna cut all the carbs and I'm gonna go only with fats and I'm gonna do fasting and I'm gonna do exercise. So please don't. We say three different approaches, but don't go crazy and do the three at the same time if your body is not used to it, because you're gonna feel really really sick. You're gonna have
Mm.
this famous keto flu, but hard. It's gonna hit you hard. Your body need to adapt. So this is gradually. In any of the three ways that Corey was explaining, we want a little bit of process of adaptation. Okay, so if we want to do on fasting, don't go crazy and fast for 5 days straight away. No, you do begin to do intermittent fasting, going a little bit longer and maybe trying to aim for 16, 18 hours window without eating, and then a small window eating. That will help to begin to adapt to that process. When it comes to exercise, is the same. Don't go crazy to kill yourself doing exercise and at the same time a low carbs diet if your body's not used to it. So keep eating your normal diet, but boost your exercise to trigger this and maybe lower a little bit the carbohydrate intake, just a little bit. And in the keto diet, I will say the same. Before jumping into only 20 grams of carbohydrates during a whole day, just begin to take out the processed ones like sugars, breads, and take those, but keep, for example, the fruits and keep some sweet vegetables, maybe some peppers, some beetroot, and these vegetables that are starchy. We have carrots and everything, so we can keep those starch and some fruits, and then we take out the fruits, and maybe then we take out and we give like a process of 1 week, several days, and we slower begin to lower our carbohydrate intake while we take more fats. This will allow the body to adapt and to be more in a good way, getting the energy from the fats. So those is important. So don't jump into do everything at the same time, is that's crazy. Give the body the time to adapt and implement them in a window of period of time. Sometime give yourself 1, 2, 3 weeks to do the process of implementation and adapting, so the body begins to produce better. And what I wanted to share here is as a personal story is that when I began to do this, I began to lower in this process. Like, okay, what I do first, I take the ultra processed foods out because they are very high in carbohydrate usually. Um, so I take them out. Then I stick with only fruits. Then I take slowly the fruits out. And then lastly, I take the starch out. And during this same process, I was incrementing my intake on some fats. So I was taking MCT oil, that is an extract from coconut oil. I was taking more avocados. I was eating more salmon, more nuts. So I was beginning to take, at the same time that I was lowering my carbs, I was putting, but I never went crazy with without carbs. And especially
Mm.
the strategy was with training. If I was going to train, I will take some carbs. So I fill up those carbs in our muscles. So my performance is good. And but maybe if I was going to be 3 days not going to the gym, but I will load the carbs, I will intake. So it's very
Mhm.
important, and it helped me to lose weight and gain muscle and feel much better. And now I have that flexibility we have been talking, and it's amazing because I can go for 1 meal a day and I can do exercise and everything. My body is used to it. At the beginning, I was getting very tired. Now it functions well because it knows how to extract energy from fats, and it does it
Right.
the process faster, and I boost the ketones faster. So, yeah, but it takes time. I'm not talking about only some weeks or months. It takes me time for my body to do all these adaptations. So don't go crazy into this.
Right.
Oh, I need this metabolic. I'm gonna do all this at the same time.
Yeah. And to know that they are additive in that way, that if I do some exercise after I've not eaten for 12 hours, like if I do it first thing in the morning before breakfast, then that's sort of a combination of a fast with the exercise. So the exercise doesn't need to be so intense because you're almost out of those sugar calories anyway because you've fasted for so long. And so that sort of boosts like it. So my fast doesn't need to be 16 or 18 hours. My fast could be the 12 to 14 hours because I put this like long walk
Yes.
at the end of the fast. And that created the ketosis and that created the effects of a longer
I
fast
love
as well. So these things can be in combination.
I love that one because that's something I'm doing these days. Is fasting. So I eat my last meal, and maybe in the morning I have been already 12, 14 hours, 16 hours on fast. Do a long walk. But before the long walk, get into the shower. Do a cold plunge hot shower. I put the cold shower. This will trigger your body to begin to produce heat. So
Mhm.
it's triggering some accelerating the metabolism. Then I go for a walk. So look, there is not intense training there, but I'm, as you say, it's like stacking up, like the fasting,
Yeah.
the cold water is triggering your body to produce more heat. Then you do the walk, and if you do that process, you're triggering to enter those fat reserves, and you're gonna burn. And it's important too to say that it's interesting to burn those fat reserves, and we keep on renewing them because if you never enter the fat reserves, we conserve some toxins in our body from the food we eat, and there are sometimes in these fats. And what we need to burn this and renew these fat reserves we have.
Yeah.
So it's important that part of the flexibility too.
Yeah, to process through the fats that we have, is important because yeah, because of the toxins and the inflammatory, things that build up in fat cells, they have a tendency to be that way, and so, yeah, it is definitely healthy and we talk about fat and fat burning and in this thing we've been talking about dietary fat when we introduced fat and so how our body processes the dietary fats and what they're useful for. But again, when we use fat as energy, we use the stored fat. That's when we get into things like this and we want to use up that stored fat. We want to be efficient at doing it and to do it consistently. And the other caveat here is like we just gave this whole like metabolic flexibility keto suggestion, but that's not your whole life. That's not, you don't have to do this forever. That's not your diet. That is a way to manipulate your body, a way to produce some metabolic flexibility. And you can try other diets. You can go in and out of these types of diets. It is about working with your body and fulfilling the needs that your body has.
Yes, and another tip is so important is the small consistent changes that we can apply in our nutrition are more much better than when we go completely extreme diet. If we go very hard, like I'm gonna do this sacrifice diet, low calorie diet, that we're gonna go so crazy in this low calorie diet during the process of a month, because this is what we call the JoJo effect in diet. Then when it finish the month, you have been restricting yourself so much, and your body have been lacking so many things that when you go jump back, usually you gain even more weight because there is an anxiety in you to eat more, and there is a
Yeah.
part of your body that have been lacking nutrients sometimes because you cut a lot of calories very very hard for a long time. So when they come back in, your body's like, oh, I need these calories. I don't know if I'm gonna starve again. So it begins to try to save as much calories and fat he can. So it's better
Yeah.
to do small changes during this nutritional aspect. That you change, maybe you change your breakfast from going to very high carb breakfast with processed foods and sugars to a more protein, fat, uh, and maybe some eggs with avocado or something like that, and you go away from only juice and you do more smoothies where you have the fiber, where you implement more vegetables. So these small changes, and you keep them, are going to be more efficient than extreme diet. So the thing is, construct something that is sustainable, that is a lifestyle, and that is easy for you to keep it. Don't go into these extreme diets that you have to sacrifice so much for a period of time, unless is this because a health issue? So maybe sometimes, yes, we have an issue with diabetes or something, and you have to go more strictly and with some rules during a period of time to recover. That's different.
Yeah.
For sickness is different, but as a normal way, I want to lose weight. I want to don't go to extreme diets that are not sustainable.
Right. And that's a way to, it sort of segues into how we make healthy eating part of our identity. It is that having that perspective that we're not just following a diet. It is sort of building these supportive, nutritive eating patterns that give our bodies the nutrients that they want, right? And that's really what we're going for here, is to have that. This is part of who I am. I nurture my body, and doing a more extreme diet for a specific health purpose, to increase my body metabolic flexibility, or to have, if I have to address a health issue, then you have the tools to say, okay, I know what this is targeted toward. I know that this is temporary, and but your baseline is an attitude toward your food that is that I want to nurture my body. I want to give my body the energy that it needs when it needs it. I need to give my body the nutrients it needs to recover from a workout, from a stressful time in my life. To sort of create that rhythm, that lifestyle rhythm, that is just making, and still enjoying your food, of
Yes.
course, still enjoying it.
Yes.
It's not about punishment or restriction. It's about, yes, reducing some of these ultra processed things that will make us unhealthy when we eat too many of them, but not to necessarily cut everything out, and but to learn to enjoy these healthier foods as well. Learn to enjoy their nurturing of our body. Learn to enjoy that that process of giving our body what it needs, and knowing that, you can have great tasting meals that are also healthy in that way as well.
Yes. And that's the thing. When we talk about all these things that we were sharing with you and about nutrition, small changes, they make the difference. Having something sustainable, that's so important. And it's all about creating that lifestyle that is aligned with that person you want to become, and that person, that what experiences you want in life, so your goals go related. But we have to have in mind that nutrition is not only what you eat. Nutrition is to the part of movement and fitness, because they are correlated, and the same with sleep, because sleep and movement will affect your cravings, your hunger, the nutrients you need. So this is why we talk about lifestyle, because depending of the demands you want for your body, you have to adapt the nutrition and the things that you're going to do it. You cannot tell me they want to run a marathon and you're only, I don't know, eating chips. No, you need nutrients for that, and the demands that it's gonna take you for that marathon, you need some kind. But if you want to build muscle, then it will be a little bit different. If you want just to be energized and good mood through the day, it's a little bit different. So there's the nutrients, but we need the sleep. So it's part important of a good sleep is so important for our nutritional aspect, and it's funny, but it's true. It's like that, and the exercise. So you have to focus what things do you want, what lifestyle rhythm do you like, how to focus on long-term health. So this is why we need all these nutrients and have hormonal balance and keep it in a good place. Hey, what levels of energy we need. For example, you were talking about this before, and it's how we prepare the meals and everything. Well, if you need to be super energized in the following next 3 hours, please don't have a lunch that is super heavy for your digestion, because it's gonna slow you down. So energy management with the nutrition becomes really important. Recovery aspects. Uh, so what we need is to build a supportive eating patterns along our diet and life. And what we want to move away is from having this mentality when you have all the time restriction mentality. I cannot because this triggers stress in your body, this triggers mental stress, and it's not a happy life. Everybody is looking for a happy life. So we need to enjoy, but we have to break that pattern that we are a slave from food cravings. We are a
Yeah.
slave from food cravings. Once you break that pattern of food craving slave and you liberate yourself from that and you choose when to do things, and you can say, I don't need that pizza or that donut or that croissant right now. I don't, I'm good. And other days it's like, I really want it. So these things are important to have it in mind. So it's not about restriction, but it's about a supportive, healthy way of eating that is about nourishment. If you get all the nourishment your body needs, all the nutrients, all the vitamins, minerals, all the proteins, the fat, the carbs, and everything, if you get all these, then you can have these moments of pleasure. But that's what we're aiming here and having a lifestyle. And we cannot recommend even a diet because depends on what part of the world you live, your metabolism, your bioindividuality, what you have access, what kind of work you have, what kind of demands you have, all those aspects,
What goals you have.
what goals you
Yeah.
have, all those affect what you should be eating and how you should be designing your lifestyle. So there is not a one perfect diet for everybody. Please escape from that. There is not a perfect diet. There are some foundations. We have been talking about these, some nutritional
Mhm.
aspects that we have to cover. And from there on, it depends of what you're looking for life and the lifestyle you're having.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the way you view nutrition, it doesn't have to be extreme to be powerful. And consistency and consistent changes and consistent ways of viewing how you eat are what going to add up over the long term, and sort of, so when you understand these things that we've talked about today and you really integrate them, that how food supports your energy, your recovery, how it supports your movement and your long-term health, then the whole thing becomes much simpler. You don't have to worry about which diet you're on. The whole thing becomes just something that becomes part of your life. Like you talked about eating just being more intentional than reactive and subject to cravings.
Yes. Yes. So, in definition, I would say we have to make that nutrition and eating is something that is intentional, that is about nourishment, is about uh, for long-term health, but at the same time for pleasure, for feeling good, having good mood. When you have good hormonal balance, you feel more happy, you feel better, you can take better decisions where you are not dragged into only cravings. So it has so many benefits, and it's the combination, and we have to do this and not become obsessed with nutrition. We don't want people to become obsessed counting all the calories, measuring every aspect that you did, and I cannot eat and restriction. We want you to be free, in that, and enjoy the process. Give the nutrients, enjoy, have fun, enjoy with your friends, go out. Don't become obsessed with nutrition. Just be aware and give what the body needs.
Right. Great. So if this episode helped bring some clarity for you for nutrition, please follow us, share it with somebody who you think might benefit from it. And in the next episodes, we're going to get deeper into nutrition, and we'll go into things like gut health, micronutrients, fasting, and more practical nutrition strategies to implement some of those things. But let us know, comment below. But until next time, we'll see you, and thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you very soon. And please just enjoy your food, be aware, and have fun.
All right.